everyone. Welcome to the Hey CTO podcast. I'm Peter Torres.
And I'm Sara Gonçalves.
And this is a space where you can get to know a little bit better the members of the CTO Portugal community. Today, our guest is Giovanna Faso. We actually like to call her Gio. So, Gio, thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be with us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's really great. And congrats on that perfectly well said Giovanna Faso. Your Italian accent is impressive.
Thank you so much. I didn't practice that much, but I kind of know my way around languages. So nice. Okay, it's already a win. So Gio, I think I'm fortunate enough to say that, I already met you on, in real life and from meetups here in Portugal. But for the people that are seeing the show for the first time and actually didn't have the pleasure to meet you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and what have you been doing lately, please.
Sure. Yeah. So I would probably say, like, if you met me, you probably remember me because I'm a little bit like Marmite. You either love me from the start or you really dislike me. Differently to Marmite is that if you really dislike me, usually I'll get the hint after a bit and then I'll try and tone down. But certainly I'm Gio. I'm Italian Egyptian. I actually was born in Italy. My mom is Egyptian. My dad is Sicilian. And I left Italy to try and actually go and study things that were not studyable in Italy. So I left when I was fairly young and I went to the UK and I started studying. I did my full training there. And then, of course, I stayed in London and I got a job. I got another job and another job and kind of ended up in tech. And there was one moment in time after I spent some time in China, in Shanghai. And I was thinking, actually, I kind of want to go back to Europe. Of course, but I want to go back to a place where actually I know there's something really exciting happening. And that's kind of how I ended up in Portugal. But I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But generally, this is me. I'm like the person that you either remember because you really love me or you really hate me. And I'm like a weird person that has bought a garage and turned it into an office, which is what you see here in the background. I'm also yeah, exactly. So I have weird objects in the background, which obviously don't make me look very professional at all. But I kind of like that. I kind of like that you can see literally everything about me in one screen, for sure.
That's really cool.
Super cool. No, I love the Marmite reference, by the way. Fantastic.
I know it's true.
And could you share a little bit more about what you have been doing lately? So the company that we are working on.
Sure. Yeah. So I just finished working at OLX, where I was there for a few years. And my role there was really looking at tech excellence or engineering ops, as people think about it. I was reporting straight into the CTO, really looking at our entire engineering function and seeing where we could actually improve our systems. So this means looking at processes. This also means looking at technology and seeing how we're actually shaping and modeling domains that are actually making us as a company kind of win the market. So, of course, after some time, I guess it really stuck with me. And I thought, actually, this whole thing of like continuous improvement married with technology really makes sense. And recently, 3 weeks ago, I joined a new company that asked me to get involved and actually lead their kind of continuous improvement engineering ops practice. And this company is Dashlane. I don't know how many of you are aware of them, but they do perfect. Yeah, they're really quite well known across Europe and even in the US for offering a really strong and secure password management service. They've been in the market for a few years now. They're really trying to like speed up and kind of step up their game because of course ransomware is a real threat these days, and of course ransomware mainly attacks companies. This is why at Dashlane right now we're spending a lot of time trying to understand what pains our companies or our clients are really feeling. So whilst we're supporting the B2C, we're also supporting the B2B. But B2B is where we need to understand a bit more what companies need.
Oh, for sure. No, that's nice. And how did you end up on engineering ops? Because that's definitely something that is quite curious. I've been in the industry for quite a while, and I think that I've always been much more, kind of attached to, delivery and things like that. Engineering ops seems kind of a different flavor of tech, right?
Yeah, I would say, because I think when back in the day, for instance, we were talking about delivery, some people we were talking about project management, we were really focusing on speed. on time, on predictability in the sense of hitting a date. But what we actually were missing was all the things that actually get, kind of take a second position as opposed to time. So quality, sort of the experience of developers producing that piece of work. So operations is a wider term that actually does look at predictability, but also looks at quality and looks at the interactions that we have amongst ourselves. So it's a big systems view of rather than a small kind of project view of how things are getting done. So I want to understand how things work together. I don't necessarily want to understand how the micro parts are getting done. I think there's a lot we can learn from the micro bits, but we can't actually operate at larger scale. We don't understand the big system.
So it's more of a system thinking and how everything kind of fits together.
Exactly. Sorry, which I was going to say is kind of also a trend we see in engineering, right? Before we used to really focus on the single bits of code, the highly specialized roles. And now instead we're asking, for instance, our talents and our colleagues to think about the bigger picture and think about how the code that they're writing is actually modeling a domain better, or how the code that they're writing is going to be shipped in a better state. So the whole industry, I think, is changing, where we're asking for people to care about the big picture and less about being the minuscule kind of granularity of being right.
Yeah. And do you feel that role of engineering ops, it's like transversal to any group of engineering? So you feel that you can adopt the same practices across any group, depending on the company? I don't know. Would you say that it's possible to use the same things?
Yeah, I would say there are some things, some kind of like good habits or best practice that you can probably roll over. But with the operations hat on, like what you really need to understand first is the system, as any big systems thinker, right? So, and no system is the same. And the system is composed of, product, so people and process. Because even though people might say, oh, we have no process here, a process is anything really that means that something's happening, right? There's process everywhere, there's good process, and then there's process that slows you down. That's different. So yes, you can probably extract some good learnings or some good kind of patterns to be able to handle big systems better. But I would say that every company should spend some time in understanding their big system. Doesn't necessarily mean that every company should have engineering ops. It's just you need someone in the room to have that big systems thinking and step away from like the delivery of the item itself.
I just love the first nugget that definitely we already got is there is always a process, right? Now it really depends how intentional you are about creating it, or if you're just going to kind of to let something emerge. But this idea of saying, oh, we don't have any processes. Yes, you have. Maybe you haven't thought about it. And that's a problem because now you have something that you don't even know. So no, absolutely. Like there's processes everywhere. It's just a matter of understanding how much thought you actually want to put on them and be deliberate. No, for sure. Fantastic. And tell me one thing, Gio. So I'm really curious, because from what I've seen and I know, you didn't take a CS degree, right? So I think that you studied in a different field. I think events management and mass communication. Was that it?
Yeah, I did a lot of wide learning. So actually, yeah, I mean, actually, I studied cultural anthropology in Italy, and then when I left to the UK, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to go and find something that I really want to do. And of course, I was and I am really into live events and communicating and being really efficient in communication. So yeah, you're right. I don't have a typical background, even though I continued doing like sociology behind robotics. I continued doing an MBA. So I would say that generally, in my opinion, and I know this kind of, again, Marmite, it doesn't land well everywhere, but to me, studying and university kind of is there to kind of prove that you are resilient and you're capable of learning. Then what you actually learn at university, sure, it can unlock some things, but it doesn't necessarily slow you down in others, right? So I don't see the fact that I'm not an engineer or that I'm not an I'm not a computer science graduate. I don't see that at this stage of my career as holding me back. I actually think I see this as an asset for myself, right?
No, for sure. And so this is so interesting, because I think that we actually have this sort of dogma that's saying, oh, like engineering, it's for engineers. And you're actually like the living proof that actually someone that didn't come from that background actually is currently very successful in tech. And so looking back to your journey, where did you see the tipping point? So when did you have like the first chance to grabbing a role in tech without that background? How was it for you? Did you kind of, was it just kind of pure luck? What kind of
So
things could you say about that?
it was a mix of like stumbling into it and sort of being attracted towards it. So I had worked in my first job out of uni was actually selling advertising space on roads. So, like those big billboards and stuff. And I used to specialize in airports, which sounds insane. So I used to fly to all these airports and sit in an airport for 24 hours and just watch people. And from the watching people, I would then work out using like some clever math I'd put in place, a sort of grade for every single billboard. So I would say fly back to my clients and say, hey, if you want high impact, but elegance, then you should go for this kind of billboard. I mean, of course, it was kind of like science built on the spot, but it kind of worked, right? So that was my first job. And then what happened was that at the time, Yahoo was looking to scale up its function. It's kind of like they called it behavioral targeting function. And I know now it's like, it sounds like bad, because these days we do not like behavioral targeting, right? But at the time, it was the new thing on the block, and it's hard to believe, right? But they basically headhunted me, and they said, hey, look, it seems like you can do maths, and you can kind of turn metrics into things that people want to buy. We have a bunch of clients that want behavioral targeting things that do amazing, that turn around amazing campaigns. Come and do it. So that's how I ended up in tech, my first step in tech. I guess Yahoo I would call tech because it was a big publisher, but
for sure.
Yeah, my exposure in tech there was basically working with an optimization team. That's what they were called. And they basically had to work out how basically these ads were actually fulfilling the campaign that Yahoo's clients at the time were paying for. And then from there, I kind of landed into smaller companies, small startups, again, where it required me to certainly understand how to build websites. And in some of them, I actually had to build my own websites using frameworks. They looked horrible. I hope no one will ever get these. I will never tell anyone because they're like disgusting. But I ended up, I think at Moo was probably my biggest experience of working in a product and tech and design led company. And that was probably, to this date, I have to say, it was my favorite experience in terms of in terms of how to work with others. So at Moo, I was really, really integrated. So there I was a tech delivery lead. So again, thinking about delivery, but from the software point of view. And I just simply had to understand how work gets done. And I think this is the ultimate thing I would say is like when you work in tech, it's not tech, engineering, code, understanding like ifs and like, arrays or any of that stuff. It's about understanding how work gets done. And if you ask that question to anyone who has critical thinking, I think you could easily open up to a wider group, a wider market.
No, for sure. I usually say, that at least 90% of the challenges in tech, it's more about people and less about technology. Exactly to your point. So I couldn't agree more. And Gio, tell me one thing. Now that you mentioned Moo, I think this is kind of the perfect segue for. So you've worked for quite big companies. You just mentioned Yahoo. You also work at the OLX. That's part of a huge group that is called Naspers, right? So they are huge. But you also talked about a different flavor of companies, right? Like Moo, now Dashlane. So definitely, and I believe that I had a similar experience about working almost for blue chip companies, so to speak, and and kind of smaller startups where things are definitely different. How do you compare them both in terms of kind of experience? Which one probably sounds more fun to you, and why?
Yeah. So look, brief answer. I think I really like the space I'm in now, which is the space of maybe starting from 100 people to 400. This space I really like. OLX, it was really, really fun. But OLX also proved to me that actually the large corporate that is trying to move many parts and still trying to work out which direction to go, and to some extent, I really suffered in that place. So my favorite is where I'm at now. And Moo, for instance, when I joined Moo, we were about 50 people. So actually, it was really small. It was really small. And now at Dashlane, only engineering is about 150 people. So, and that's out of a company of 300. So I think just running numbers, you understand that actually Dashlane really puts its product and the making of its product to the heart of what the company does. And a good portion of the other, 50% that is not engineering and product ends up actually being around CS. So I think looking at those kind of numbers, that's how I like to look at it. It's like how much of the people that are working for you are dedicated to engineering, to product development, which, by the way, in my view, are kind of like the two sides of the same coin, and how much of the people that you're hiring are actually dedicated to understanding customers, handling customers, picking up customer insight. That's CS. If a company doesn't have like a good mix, where maybe engineering is a small minority and there's just a few scattered product managers here and there, usually it's a good tip for me to say, okay, this is not going to work for me, right? This is just for me. For me, it doesn't work. So I would say my preference is the types of companies I've worked at, like Moo and Dashlane, where a good portion of the people working there were really focused on the product. They're really, really product-led and obsessed with it.
Yeah. And before we were talking about processes, and now I was wondering the type of differences that you have in processes in a small company, in a small group of engineering, in a big one. Are they too different? There is a tendency of, like, there is a trend on big companies, on big engineering, start creating many processes and things start getting too bureaucratic, or this doesn't happen and it's really necessary?
Yeah. So look, this is like a kind of a sensitive topic, right? Because we don't want to say that large companies end up always being bureaucratic. I have seen a ton of bureaucracy around small companies as well. Bureaucracy is, for me, is kind of the first signal that something's not right. Like there's just maybe the boundaries are not clear, the trust amongst teams is not really well grounded. And usually that's because maybe the direction is not clear. So when people can't really understand where they're going, then they have way too much time on their hands to kind of, complain or push back or, slow down or kind of close themselves. I would say that in a large company like Yahoo and OLX, you can do lots of change, you can have lots of impact, but the time it will take for you to see the impact is really, really big, is really much larger. So it's like the amount of time it takes me to be able to see the impact of my change. And that's what I'm driven by, right? I want to do changes, but not constantly. I want to do changes that I can see impact as soon as possible so I can iterate. And if I can't do that within, 3 months or 4 months, and I have to wait like a year before I can change again, I feel like I'm kind of just, running the machine rather than like shopping for new machines. And as I need to be solving a problem basically, and if the problem isn't clear after a few months, or I'm not getting more feedback, then I really don't know what I should be doing with myself.
Yeah, makes sense.
No, for sure. And tell us one thing. So you're from Italy, you worked in the UK, you're now, based in Portugal. How obviously I know that it's definitely in different times of your life, but how easy it was for you to move from Italy to the UK and from UK to Portugal? Could you make any sort of kind of comparison how easy it is actually, for someone from abroad to settle in? And obviously we know now that there is Brexit, and so definitely things really, really changed. I'm pretty sure of that. But do you have kind of good or bad experience in terms of moving and how hard it was for you to kind of to move around in these countries?
Yeah, I mean, look, the phase of my life where the moment in my life where these moves happened were dramatically different, right? So when I moved to the UK, I was like 20 something, maybe 21. Oh. I thought the biggest thing that I really had to move was like all my clothes, because I felt like I didn't have all my clothes. And of course you come to the UK and like, what the hell am I bringing clothes from? Like this is like the city in London where you can go shopping and it's amazing. So, of course, my move into London was challenging, but mainly because I was kind of around new people that spoke a different kind of English than mine. You know, the English we speak, we learn in countries that are not, for instance, the UK, US is still quite different, right? So I remember walking into the airport and trying to jump into the taxi, and it was a black cab because at the time, of course, you didn't have Ubers or any of these, and I remember he kind of asked me like where I wanted to go, and he said it in such a like Thai accent. I was like, "What?" Like, exactly. I was like, "What?" And he just like he could totally looked at me. I was like, "Oh God, there's another one." She's like fresh, you know, fresh from the boat. She doesn't know where she's going. So the move to the UK was exciting. It was difficult, but I mean, I lived in a room of the size of maybe 9 meters squared. I had one room. And basically I created like, you know, a cooking corner, a sleeping corner, a reading corner. For those of the people that know me, they remember that room because basically it was just like my growing up room, right? And that's all I could afford. And, you know, so it was great. And I lived like that for a fairly long amount of time. And I got myself a job in pubs and multiple jobs trying to get myself outside of that room. But I guess moving from the UK into Lisbon, the journey was quite different, right? And the pros, of course, is that I don't live in a 9 meter squared room here. So I didn't move from like, 40 square meters to like 9 square meters. That didn't happen. Of course, here everyone speaks Portuguese, really well Portuguese, of course, right? Because you're Portuguese. And my Portuguese is kind of like delayed a little bit because everyone also speaks really good English. So it's kind of hard to learn a new language and everyone else around you is just like so fluent in your second language. And then the other journey, I think, from moving from the UK to here, this one is quite interesting, actually. I thought I'd researched. I thought I'd actually understood what Portugal was about. And I really wanted to be part of this like growing, cool, exciting tech scene that I could see happening in Lisbon and across Portugal. But I did actually think that, I don't know why, I kind of thought that, like you guys are really like, kind of like Italians. So I kind of felt like, okay, this is like going to be like going back home, but not being quite home. And I'm going to feel like really, really connected and really united. And we're going to go out and we're going to like be in each other's houses all the time, which is kind of quite typical in Italy. There's no basically personal space. And of course, living in the UK for 18 years, I had been like for 17 years, I'd been in a place where personal space is really, really important. So when I came here, as I said, I thought it was like Italy, but actually I realized that it's kind of more like the UK. Like personal space is really important here in Portugal. And, having your own life and finding the time to socialize is you have to really make the time to socialize. It doesn't just happen. So I think maybe one con would be that actually integrating at a time when also we're during a pandemic can be quite challenging. But everyone has been super friendly and open to talk. It's just that it doesn't happen like in Italy that you like, bump into someone on the road and all of a sudden you're having like pizza with them at home, It doesn't work like that, So that's maybe my biggest learning.
No, it's actually funny that you just mentioned that thing about being hard to learn Portuguese because of everyone speaking, so well English. I had a previous colleague of mine at Talkdesk. He was from Romania. His name is Sorin. And he always complained about that, saying, why are you just, I go into a meeting room, you are all speaking Portuguese, and then I just enter the room and everyone starts speaking English. How do you want me to learn Portuguese if I can't even hear the language? And it's super interesting, right? Because we are just trying to be polite and be inclusive to make sure that everyone can join the conversation. But obviously then, actually to hear Portuguese becomes a little bit more challenging. So I completely understand that.
Yeah, I think we tend to adapt too much. And I also know people in autism that were feeling that it was really being hard for them to learn Portuguese because everyone adapted to them and tried to always speak in English. And they actually asked us, no, speak Portuguese so we can learn. I don't know if you also are doing that.
I mean, I do, but I've been on the other side where I was in Italy and people would be like, people that really speak terrible Italian, they'll be like, oh no, I understand, just carry on speaking Italian. I'm like, okay, but I've got shit to do, come on, man. Like, I can't be speaking like broken Italian to you because you've got to. So I'm also sensitive about that. It's like, language is important to get our characters come through. And I think, of course, I'm very comfortable in English. I'm very comfortable showing and sharing my personality in English. I just need to actually invest the time and boring other people around practicing my Portuguese, rather than like getting my colleagues to have to listen to my crappy Portuguese.
Yeah.
And sorry, and that fluency of English. So when you moved immediately to the UK, were you already kind of, so fluent in English, or actually, like you could actually advise someone to say, hey, maybe you just are okay in English, you can actually move to the UK because like in 3 years time, you just pick it up and that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, I wasn't this fluent. I also, those that know me, that I'm not a deep avid reader. I skim lots of books, I skim lots of information. And reading usually is what actually builds your vocabulary. But for English, I was coming with good basic English, let's say. But what really saved me in the UK was basically not having Italian friends. And trust me, the Brits are no way as adaptable as the Portuguese. So it was like, you deal with
there was no Skype.
Like, you're gone. Or like if you're working in like a bar, or I had many years where I was serving beers, because that's what you do in the UK to kind of support yourself. And if that's how you learn English. You kind of serve a beer, someone says thank you, you say you're welcome, and that's it. You've got a word in. And then you start pronouncing it correctly, because you start seeing people laughing at you because you're saying things the wrong way. So you're like, I don't want to be the laughing stock every time I go out, so I'm going to start sounding more like them. I think it's important to surround yourself with let's say locals, natives, as much as possible, and that's actually what worked wonders with me.
That's smart. Very well.
So we were here talking about challenges in personal life and adapting to countries, but I'm also curious, looking through your whole career, what was the biggest challenge that you had, the biggest lesson that you took from it? Have you ever reflect about that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of connected to the topic that you touched upon around the background. And I really, really want to make time to say this. For a long period of my career, I felt like I was not allowed to work in engineering. And so every time I did get a job in engineering, I felt I had to add something to my personality or add something to what I did to kind of win acceptance, It's like saying, you join a team, and rather than saying, hello, I'm Gio, I do this, you join the team and you say, hey, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. It's like I felt like my introduction of what I brought to a team or to an organization had to be about giving reassurance to the people around me that I wasn't going to be like those ones, And after many, many years of feeling the pressure of having to do that, I actually switched and I said, no, like I'm actually going to tell people what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell them what I'm not going to do, because it's kind of not relevant. And I grew really comfortable with this idea that actually belonging to engineering is something that I cannot actually orchestrate. It's something that happens naturally. So I have to worry less about the sense of identity and the sense of like being in the team or not being in the team. I just need to do what I think I do best. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, we'll work it out. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's really hard for someone who doesn't come from an engineering background to work in an engineering space and having this kind of this cloud on your head, thinking that everyone is looking at you and they think that you're an idiot. Like, that's not actually happening. Engineers are not like that. They don't think of you as an idiot. It's an old preconception that comes from the 90s, from like shitty sitcoms. That's not actually true. Not everyone is Sheldon, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're past that. And I think the more confident you are in a group of highly smart, or even not smart, I've met not smart engineers, by the way, like the more confident you are in your own skin, I think generally the better it will come through. So that's one of the big learnings I had. Stop trying to feel like I need to belong and kind of come to terms with the fact that I am what I am. And, but that takes time, right? That also takes validation from people around you.
Brilliant. That's actually probably one of the best antidotes to the imposter syndrome, right? Like if as the more confidence you can actually inject in yourself, and just like feeling good in your own skin, that's crucial, I think, because I really believe that it needs to start with you being convinced of who you are in order then to convince others. Fantastic. Really, really good. For sure. I know. And tell us one thing. And all of these learnings, and now you have quite an interesting career. How do you stay up to date on things, right? Kind of, like I've skimmed on your LinkedIn, and I saw some comments about domain driven design, for instance, and so how do you stay yourself relevant and make sure that you're on top of your game? So you just mentioned that you're not like a super avid book reader. So do you see yourself kind of relying more on talks and conferences, maybe some training courses? So how usually do you do that kind of, refreshers and learning new things?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So I do two things. I'm always enrolled at university studying something. So right now I'm actually studying. I'm getting a computer science degree finally, but not doing it to fit in. Doing it because this is what I do. So like 2 years ago, for instance, I did a master's in arts buying because I love art and I love understanding like how art gets made and valued. So I always sign up to university. University and courses are actually, well, not in the UK, but elsewhere, they're actually quite cheap. So it does keep your brain kind of nicely oiled. And the second thing I do is that I did say, yes, I'm not an avid reader, but actually what I do is that I don't go deep into books. What I do is I go wide. So I will kind of listen into a couple of conferences. I will read a couple of blogs. Then I will kind of read a couple chapters of books. I have like an immense library that I've read all the books, but not fully. And I try and basically research a lot. And researching is probably where I'm the strongest at. So with domain-driven design, this was something that kind of stumbled in one of my research journeys already many, many years ago. And I stayed connected with the community doing DDD in Portugal and outside of Portugal. And I think this is what I feel comfortable doing, for instance, in those meetings where I'm surrounded by engineers and they're trying to discuss about like the smallest detail. I tell them, well, but why are we doing this? Like, how are you really autonomous when half of the stuff that you're running, you have to run for someone else to do their bit? Like you're not autonomous, So yeah, that's how I keep up to date with things.
No, fantastic. No, super
Nice,
smart.
nice tips for our listeners.
No, for sure. So
And
should we go to the
final part?
To the fun bit?
Yeah, to the fun part. Yeah, me and Pedro, we always like to end up these great conversations with two final questions, more personal and more fun. Also to know a bit more about you. And our first question is: imagine that you could have dinner with someone in the world. Who would you choose?
Anyone whatsoever.
Oh God. Oh dear. This is so hard. So hard.
Take your time. It's fine.
I mean,
We can edit.
I mean, oh dear, it's so hard. Actually, okay, I have two people.
Wow, nice.
Okay. Yeah,
But
we
they're
have space
two
for
because
three.
they're for different reasons. So the first one, which is more like for the comical reason, but this is kind of the first name that came to my mind, is Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think already Pedro knows this. I despise the guy. I really despise him. I can't stand the way he communicates. I can't stand the way he picks on things. I can't stand his self-centered grandeurs. And I just want to have him for dinner and being like, what are you thinking?
You want to confront him.
How do you even come up with stuff? Yeah, exactly. And I would actually have him for dinner because I don't want to just bash him. I just want to actually understand what is behind the genius inside Elon Musk that doesn't come through on his Twitter, that doesn't come through his comments. So I would want to have dinner to literally understand where is the part that is actually matters, because everything else you're doing is just noise and it really pisses me off. So that's the one person. And I think the second person I would like to have dinner with is an old boss. An old boss that actually, when she joined and she made some decisions that actually impacted me pretty significantly, I was so angry with her, I was really angry. I was really upset. I felt like I hadn't been heard. I hadn't been valued for the work I'd done. And yeah, it was a really kind of weird and dark place for me, because I felt like, again, rejected once I'd done all this work to like feel like I belonged. And then all of a sudden I felt rejected after all the work I'd put in. And I think I would love to have dinner with her again to kind of actually tell her thank you, because that was the moment in time when I stopped trying to really fit into environments and started actually valuing what made me different and what I could add to those environments. So I would like to have dinner and kind of go through that process again, that difficult conversation we had many, many years ago. And I would like to see how it would feel now, whether it would still kind of put me on a defensive note, or whether actually I would tell her, yeah, chapeau, this makes complete sense. And I would do exactly the same thing,
That requires
Interesting.
that requires a great amount of reflection. Do you find yourself like every now and then kind of stopping whatever you're doing and kind of and feel grateful for what you achieved so far, and even kind of recognizing people that have done things in the past that today you actually look at things that you didn't understand back then, and now that you actually realize and actually kind of thankful for those sort of kind of decisions and actions? Or don't really kind of invest a lot of time thinking about your past?
I do think about the past, but I think one of the tendencies I have that is like, yeah, possibly I should do something about it, is to start by looking for problems, right? I think it's because I'm wired this way. So, for instance, when we have to talk about what to do next, what I should really be doing is framing this conversation by saying, oh, this has been great. This has been fantastic. This has been, incredible. It's magic, blah, blah, blah. And then like spends a little bit of time saying, this is an area of improvement. Instead, what I tend to do is like, look at the system and be like, oh, this is not good. This is blocked here. And I know the language is negative, but actually what I'm actually doing is I'm just recognizing patterns, right? And I'm just saying, you see why this is not working? Let's go. This is it. Let's have a conversation around these pain points. But I guess, and that's having that mindset doesn't really allow me to think back and say, oh, now I see how the thing that we've done as a team has really, developed into this amazing thing. Like I'm lacking that desire of looking back and sort of congratulating myself or even others about the great achievements. I don't do that enough. I admit. Yeah. As I said, Marmite.
Exactly. I'm actually a big fan of Marmite, to confess. It's that sort of thing that the first time you try it, it's just odd, but then it really kind of grows into you, right? Like all of a sudden, it's like, this is actually quite interesting, and then all of a sudden you're completely hooked. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
couldn't agree more. Final question. So this question is one that I have a huge curiosity, and I'm going to confess. I usually just say, folks, that I just don't like to play, because although I'm right-handed, when I'm playing, it looks like I'm playing with my left hand because I'm terrible at it.
Okay, Pedro, this is really, really awkward now because you haven't actually said what you're playing.
No. So here's the thing. Oh, God. So, good one.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, we're actually talking about table tennis.
Okay, great. Okay.
So here's the thing. I know that table tennis is actually a good thing and something that that is quite kind of in your past and kind of influence you. And so again, like I'm really, really poor player, and I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed of admitting that. So please let us know what table tennis is for you and kind of how it marked you.
Right. Okay. Table tennis. This is also a thing that I used to use to get, closer to engineering teams and be like, hey, did you know that I used to play in the British League in the UK as a table tennis player? You want to be friends now, hey? So my connection with table tennis is actually a maternal one, because my mom used to play in Egypt's national team, of course, in the late 70s, and she was doing that as a full-time job for many years. And then, of course, as with any athlete, you basically kind of run out of that period where you can actually live on sports and you end up doing something else. But that was my connection with table tennis. Unfortunately, although I saw my mom kind of playing table tennis for many years over and over again, as even as a part-time sport, it was never a sport that was considered, at least in Italy, as a sport. So I didn't really spend much time with it. And then when I moved to the UK, possibly in because sort of in reaction of the fact that I had left home, and maybe maybe I felt like homesick in some sense, I started getting closer to the sport. And that's how I basically ended up like playing on these borough teams or community teams. And then slowly, you kind of work your way up. And then the coach, the trainer for the British League, like, he saw me play and he said, okay, I want you in my first division, come and train. And first of all, it's a real sport, by the way, if anyone's actually thinking. Probably the table tennis you play at the pub or, in the office, that's not the real sport, because you're probably doing illegitimate, like, fouls all over the place. So I wouldn't say that is necessarily the table tennis sport, but in a proper sport environment, it's a great sport. It keeps your mind alive, because you're actually thinking as a strategist. You're not just like throwing balls in a goal. I mean, with all due respect with footballers, but with table tennis, you actually need to think about, how you're holding the bat, how you're hitting the ball, how you're responding. Is it going to be short? Is it going to be long? Is it going to be a corner? You're moving the opponent in a way every time you hit the ball. And these days I still play table tennis, actually. But my husband is obsessed with tennis, so we have an arrangement that keeps our marriage alive, which is I play tennis with him twice a week, and I play table tennis with like my team twice a week. So everything tennis.
Maybe we can book a game. We need to schedule a game. I like to play,
God,
but I only know to play with the office rules.
Oh dear.
No.
I'm so annoyed.
We'll kill you.
I need to tell you the story. So there was let's say a long time ago in London, where again I was playing table tennis and I was single and I was going out on a date. We were all using apps, so whatever. This guy's like, yeah, let's go out on a date, and he suggested to meet in this bar that had a table tennis. So I was like, okay, like, this guy could be the guy of my dreams, like, on a first date with a table tennis. Are you crazy? Like, so
what are the odds?
Exactly. So I assumed that this guy knew what he was doing, knew what he was talking about, and kind of wanted to win me over with sports. And I was like, okay, I'm done. So I show up to this dinner, to this date, fully dressed up in table tennis gear, which, by the way, is not office wear. So we have special shoes, we have special kind of like skirts, we have special shirts that look like polo shirts. There's special gear, and of course with my own bat, actually a selection of bats, just in case, because I didn't know what kind of game he was playing. And I remember going to this date, and this guy was like dressed like he was on a date with like whatever, a shirt and stuff. And I was like, what the hell are you wearing? This was literally the first thing I told him. I'm like, what the hell are you wearing? I thought we were playing table tennis. And he was like, yeah, but like, it was just like informal. It was, and like, of course the date went like crap. I spent most of the dinner complaining to him.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, why did you claim, like, why are you even suggesting sports? You don't even understand. Like, I was pissed off with the guy that he had like literally abused the table tennis sport as a means of like going out with a girl to a dinner. And I'm like,
shame on him.
Yeah, exactly. That's my story.
Oh my God, brilliant. So
thank you for that.
No, absolutely. Look, thank you for that. The best story ever. Thank you for this time. We are pretty much at the end. So, thank you so much, Gio, for being here with us and kind of been sharing such a interesting and funny stories. Thank you so much. So, thank you everyone also for watching the show. We hope you have some good insight and inspiration, and maybe actually having some good, nice and good appetite to play table tennis. And obviously, I think that now it becomes really clear that if you show up on a date thinking about the table tennis, make sure that you appear with the right gear. So we hope to see you again on the next episode of Hey CTO. So see you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.